So while others are joining, so any questions from yesterday's session or any other session, the Docker point of view or any other thing? Okay. So let's get started. So can you see my screen?
Yes, Raghu, we can see.
Okay.
What happened? No one had their lunch today?
Yeah. Friday, TGIF, right?
Right.
It's like people are joining now.
Yes. I spoke to Manoj also. He's going to check with the team and get back to me on this.
Okay. I guess I think there might be some other call, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, so if no one is having any questions, then I'll ask some questions. Yeah, from the Docker pointer. Yeah. So in which language Docker is written? Just open session, anyone can answer. Which language? I'll give you options: Python, Java, and Go language.
I think Go programming language, right?
Right. Yeah. So he's the father of Docker. The founder of Docker, otherwise. The thing, 36 years old guy, right? The young chap. Solomon X. He is currently the CTO of Docker. So he is the founder of this the Docker. What is Docker file? And that is what we were discussing. 2 lines about Docker file. I mean, you don't need to refer any book and all these things. So whatever you know, you can just try to answer. So Docker file.
Docker file having the instructions, we can create the customized image out of it.
Okay. So what is the layer between Docker container and the operating system? And what is the program name which we will install? Which actually act like an interface between container and the operating system.
Docker engine.
That's right. Yeah. So Docker engine is a program written in Go language, which will help the container to talk to the operating system. So what is the difference between Docker run command and Docker attach command? I'll answer. So Docker run command will spin up a container from an image. Docker attach command will help us to log into a container. And then, so this is, we have not completed anyway, but then I just asked these questions from yesterday's sessions. So entry point is the instructions, which is one of the component in Docker file where we have written this thing. So the CMD cannot accept arguments, right? The entry point, whereas it will accept the arguments. Now, moving on to the normal operations about managing the images and containers. If you'd like to start or stop a container, you can use this Docker start command or Docker stop command. So if you want to list all the running containers, Docker PS is the command. Yes, -A will list all the stopped containers also. If you want to start a container, you can use Docker start space the container ID. Stop and the same stuff, Docker stop. If you would like to get terminal access of the container, existing running container, you can also use this command called Docker exec command. Basically, abbreviation is execution. So what it will do, this is a command which will start another process within a running container. So if I want to run a program called bin bash, which is a shell scripting program, so that now you get a bash shell from the container point of view. The command, the syntax I will use is Docker execute exec space -i-t in standard input and sudo terminal. Provide the container ID where you want to trigger bin bash, and the suffix to the command with the program which you want to run. So in this case, it is bin bash. What is exactly it is doing is, it is actually nothing but you are trying to log into a container, as simple as that. So I'll just demonstrate this thing. Let me, by the way, log into my machine. So while I'm working on spinning up the machine, so Docker attach is also a command which will help us to log into the container, right? So what we have so far discussed yesterday. What is the difference between Docker attach and this command which we are right now going to discuss? Docker exec. Any guesses? Docker attach is something that which will help you to get into the container. Now, the one which we are just now discussing, this is also looks like same, right? So you're trying to log into a container using Docker exec command. Any guesses? What could be the difference there? Let me see if there are any containers here. So I don't see any running containers and stop containers. Yeah, that is one stop container. That is fine. I will try to remove this one for now. Now, am I having any images here? Yeah, there are some images. So let me try to run Tomcat one -d daemon mode -capital P and Tomcat one capital P is for port mapping. -d is for daemon mode. So it will be running in the daemon mode, the port mapping. So it is right now mapped to the 49,153 port number. Okay, now if I want to get into this container, yesterday now we learned about Docker attach. So you can use Docker attach and give the container ID to get into the container. And also Docker execution. But the difference is, if I'm trying to use Docker attach, it actually try to log into the existing shell inside the container. Whereas Docker execution command will load a bin bash or a bin shell, and then you go into that shell and log into the system. So attach, suppose if it not finds any shell program inside the container, it will land in no man's land. And then you cannot do any operations, and then you may lose the connectivity to the container and it can crash. Whereas when you use Docker exec command, it will start a shell, and within that shell you will be logging in. So even if I do exit incidentally or accidentally from that container, there is no harm because your container will be still up and running. It is only that particular shell where you actually logged in, right? That particular shell will be closed. So which is the best option? Docker execution is the best option. So Docker execution -i-t, and what is the container ID? This is the container ID. I am saying that please start a bin bash so that I can log into the container. Done. I'm inside the container. Now if I do even exit also, that is okay. I'm only coming out of the shell program, but my container is still running. But whereas if I try to do Docker attach, I really don't know whether shell is there or not in this inside the container, or whether it is up and running or not. So it will land in no man's land, and then yeah, you have to terminate the container. So let's try. So there is no shell, nothing, like no commands, nothing is working. Yeah. So if I do Control C, what will happen? Container will be crashed. Done. Check the container. Yeah, it's not there. So it is clearly says that Docker execution is superior command to always access the container. Any questions on this? So deleting container is very easy. You can only delete the container that have been stopped. So the command we use is docker rm. You just need to provide the name of the container or the ID of the container. Deleting images RMI. You need to provide either remote repository and tag, that is image and colon tag, or you can also provide the image ID. Yeah, we have discussed this in Docker Hub. We can create this thing. Now, if I want to push an image to this Docker Hub, we have discussed this thing. So we have to tag this existing container with that particular name. Only then you'll be able to push it. So for example, Docker space images. So this I want to push to my repository. I have the credentials. So I'll do this thing. Tag means basically creating another short link or soft link, whatever you want to say. Docker tag. This was the image name. Please rename this with my repository account name. Images. So can we see that there is no a tag is created? Of course, it is referring the same snapshot ID and image ID in the background, etc. It will not, that I will duplicate that. So now I would like to push this thing. Docker, first of all, login. This was login succeeded. Now try to push it. Push this one column because there are multiple types, right? So it is pushing now. So go to update.docker.com and verify that. So what is the name of this thing? Just refresh this thing, by the way. Yeah, this one, I think, updated a few seconds ago. You can see this thing, right? HTTP. Yes. Tag name is 7.2. So now once it is pushed, then anybody in the world can download this image using Docker pull and my repository, my this thing, etc. etc. Any questions? So now inside the Docker, the data which is generating from the container side, it is temporary, volatile. You may lose the data at any point of time because containers are temporary and then permanent kind of nature. So anytime they can go ahead and crash. So what about the data which is super generated this thing? So the best practice is, for example, if you want to handle logs, logs created by a tool, let's say application tools or web server tool and all these things, it is always suggested or advised or recommended that always try to store all those logs in storage area. So we call it as volume. So only thing is you need to monitor that and then you need to do basic jobs. So mounting and all the stuff has to be done, and then you need to configure application such a way that it can store the logs into that particular location. So what is volume? It is a directory inside the container which is designed to persist the data irrespective of this life cycle of the container. So whenever you are trying to write that in Docker file, always remember all these changes are excluded when updating an image. There's no rule to do. Even if you're converting a container to image, don't think that that particular storage will be still with you. And they are permanent in the sense, yeah, persistent when the container deleted also. Also, you can map the logs to the any other folder outside the machine. For example, locally if you want to store, so you can store that. Yeah, so you can do many things like that. 1 second. Uh, yeah, back now. Moving on to this volumes. So all volumes are mounted where while creating or executing a container only, right? Because as soon as the container is shut it down and it will come out of that, so those volumes will be discarded. You can actually map a uh, container instead of volume. You can map to an existing host folder also. So all the paths specified must be there. So all the it will be absolute path you have to mention. So we'll take one example. For example, this is execute a new container and mount the folder to this into the file system. So inside this thing, you will be running these things. Now, where it will be stored on your machine. So let me check it out. I'm going to a machine now. First of all, Are there any containers? No. Any stopped containers? No. Very good. So I'm trying to run a container with hyphen capital P. Okay. Port mapping hyphen P. And I'm trying to use this my volume. I'll use CentOS. Yeah, it's using Nginx, but that's fine. I'll use CentOS. Or Nginx, let's try to use Nginx. 1.7. Nginx is a web service. It's an image in this case. So let's see what will happen. First, it will download the image because it is not there in my local machine. So it is simple from the Nginx, right? So Docker space images. Yes. So Nginx is full. Now what happened after that command? So PS container, it is pinned up. Because I also used capital P, port mapping is also done. 49, 155, and which way the port mapping is running. So just check it out whether I can access this this particular stuff from outside. 49,155. 9,155. Yes, I can also access the Nginx stuff. So now here, when we look at this container ID, yeah, so this is what it has happened, but let's log into the container. So I can use Docker exec command, right? I can use this hyphen IT and then 407. That's the container ID. Bin bash. I'm just trying to log into the container. So what is the volume we created? We created a volume called my volume. This is the folder. Basically, it's a mounted point. So let me go to the folder, see what is there inside there. Nothing like nothing it is there. Now I'll try to exit. I mean, it will not shut down the container. Why? Because we use a Docker exec, right? So where it is mapped. So I will check it at volume list. Docker space volume ls. So there is a volume available or created. Yeah. So this is the volume name. Of course, it is not in the way like in the my volume auto recognize. Just see is there any other way. So I'm trying to list or inspect the spirit information of one or more volumes. The Docker volume inspect the local one, this name. For example, this is referring to this particular data. So basically, it is actually referring to this folder, Docker volume, and this is actually the volume exa code here. It is in this case, this is the exa code here. Some OCF and all these things. Similarly, if you want to find out more details, you can get that other stuff also. So if you really want to see what is this data it is stored here, you can just simply say less data, nothing it is there. So if I try to create, say, welcome.txt, and there is one more volume also. No? Check it out. That is also Docker inspect, volume inspect, Docker volume inspect. So the path is this one, same similar one. second.txt. So the two volumes we created, that's fine. Now again, let me go back to the container. Inside the volume. So can we see the welcome.txt, which was created in the /_ is now listed here. So if I try to create one more file here, that's container.txt. See, when I come out of the container, this is welcome.txt. What was the other one? This is OCF. This is this one. Yeah, some data. Basically, these volumes, when I was trying to create or mount it along with the container, it is listed like that. But even if I remove the take container also, there will be no harm. It is not just stop, so I can also use RMF. Stop on the delete the container basically. Can I also map to an existing folder inside that? Yes. -IT, -v is roots and destination folder. So in this case, docker run -it -v, so like volume only. Please map this to this folder. Data. Of course, you need to provide the image name now. Image name. For images. I think the center is selected. And I mean, inside that, what is the folder name where you want to map? It's just a random like any CentOS, and this is the image name, CentOS colon save. Now I'm inside the container. So see, there is CentOS folder is there. It is mapped where each type of folder. That's CentOS.txt. Even if I come out of the container, I can see the file which was created inside the container on top of this volume. The same thing also can be accessed from here. Any questions on this? So what is the uses of the volume? So volume usage, yes. So when you decouple the data, which is stored from the container, yeah, so you can carry and store and reserve in a place. So in case if you want to mount two containers, your data can be shared. So let's say that if you have an Tomcat application, so you would like to share the data, it is easy for you. Mounting folder on the host is testing purposes is fine, but it is but generally in production we don't use that. So let's move on to the networking side now. So we have seen that capital P is like port mapping. So that is how it is right now this thing. But if I'm looking for a specific port, yeah, if I know that the destination side, what is the port, it will be this thing. Then once you like expose the ports, those ports can be mapped to those machine here. So it can be manually mapped to or auto mapped there. So small p, yeah, we can use that way, or capital P, you can use that way. So Docker run -d small p, and you know what? So you can use this 8080:80 and the image name there. In this case, -d -p means like please run in the background. -p is like port mapping. So the difference here is that yes, I can have my own port. I no need to wait for dynamically Docker can give a port to me. So that advantage I will be having here. So let's just give one try. So Docker run. So I'll try to use the same Tomcat. This time I would like to do a port mapping. Inside that, I know Tomcat is also running an 8080. And this is my image. And by the way, what was the addition? I think 7, right? Okay, port 8080 is already in use. That is it. Where it is settings, Tomcat is running. Should be there. That's done. I went to movie. This time it stopped and then it ran this particular port. Now I can access my Tomcat directly and 8080 only. So that's it. Colon 80. I can access the applications. And I can use web apps. Web apps is not there. I think examples is there. So end user will not know whether this application is running in container or not, because it is not looking like a container IP. It is looking like IP where the Tomcat is installed and it is configured to run. Right. So any questions on this? No question. Okay. Automapping capital P is in the case of that they don't know really in which port has to be mapped. I'm okay that randomly can give one number to the Nginx. In that case, you can do that particular. In Docker file, when writing Docker file, you can also expose these instructions so that someone can know that in which port it is about to listen. That is the best practice. So in this case, what is the requirement? The spin up a Ubuntu Mage, yeah, and install some softwares inside that. So and then try to expose the port numbers, 84 ports there. So CMD Nginx -g daemon off. So when I use Nginx -g daemon off, what it is done, it is actually nothing but running the program inside the container as a background. So the advantage is because it has to be accessed from outside. Now the proxy, the capital P refers the proxy stuff. what do you mean by that? For example, let me see if there are any container. Yeah. So there is one container port mapping, right? So now if I try to check it out, what are the process running? One is, yeah, the Docker daemon. This is the main one. Okay. And the other one is 51213 process ID. So what is this one Docker process? So it is a program trying to connect to this thing on the TCP base host IP and from anywhere. So that 8080 host port to the container IP, this one inside that, and this is the container port. So host IP host port is connecting to container IP and then container port. What it is connecting? 000 from anywhere. TCP host IP is 0.0.0.0. That is the meaning of that. So this is another, actually the program, the Docker so and so job run, which is running explicitly. So even if you look at here, the main program process ID is 3446 and the proxy is child process of this 3456. Now what is 517? I mean, it is overrelated. It is just running outside and the process ID is this one. So if I try to stop the container, Docker PS, stop A36. Now check it out, what are the process running? Yeah. I don't see proxy. I don't see the Java program, nothing is running. It is just that so and so thing is running. The Docker daemon. Nothing, that's it. So the background process, or like we call it like foreground process, is very important, that in case if you want to do a port mapping and start it up when you're spinning up outside, which is now related with the container, which is very, very critical, important. So far we have seen that if you have a machine like this thing, and if there is a container running here, if something is running inside this thing, how do you access from outside? Basically, like trying to connect to that particular stuff, and there's the port number you are giving, and this is the port number you are trying to connect to this particular stuff, so that I can access the application. And then I'm using for reverse proxy and all that particular stuff to do access to this particular stuff until you find a better solution for this. Okay, so I do not want to do port mapping and everything, but I want that there are two machines here. One probably is having web server, anything. And I have one more container. So this is your web container. This is your, okay, you can say DB container. So my thing is that how do you connect from container to container? So this is port mapping. That is fine. I understand. So we use a concept called linking here. It is actually announced at Jenkins that they're going to withdraw this particular facility in the coming editions, but it will take a lot of time because a lot of people started using already this thing, and the disgrace that they use in the production environment. Non-mandatory, just advice as this suggestion. So what are the steps we have here? First, create the source container and then create the recipient container. Use this link option to connect to the first container. Yeah, of course, definitely the first container has to be there. Otherwise, you'll be not able to connect to that. No? So give your container meaningful name. By the way, you can use your own name also. Docker run -d -name and so on. So in this case, database and then Postgres. Now create the recipient for containers and link above. So if you look at this thing, Docker run -d -p that we know. Name website is also, that is where the so and so things will be given, investigated and all those things. So Docker run -d -p name, name like what is that application that you want to have deployed. In this case, it is website. Link that within database container. So I have to provide the database container name. Again, colon D and space nginx. Now let's see how the output will be. So uses of linking. What is the advantages we have seen now? Creating container can talk to each other. They don't need to work on exposes. Microservice based, it is very useful. So let's say you have 3 layers: container, Tomcat container with MySQL container, and Tomcat needs to be connected to MySQL. You can always work on different services, and then let system take care of those. So I don't think linking is needed for you, but yeah, in case if you insist, let me do one exercise on that. I wrote a Postgres, what I'll do, Docker run -d -name of it. Okay. So this time we are providing name actually. I'm giving a name called Dharani. Docker run -d -name. Dharani. Now what is the image name which you want to use? So image, I don't want to use any product related, OS related. I'm trying to use. Centers. So look for the latest image. I think I did not give any latest image. Yeah, so it will try to download the latest one. So now check it out. It went into stop mode. Why? Because there was no process running. Yeah, center is supposed to run, but I think it went into stop mode. Maybe something has to run inside that. What I know, I install this thing. I use app server. Name is database. Name, container name is app server, and I am trying to spin it up. CentOS 7. So what I will do, I'll instead of -d, I'll use -it. So that night it can be interactive. -I, with two names. That's the syntax here. It's two names. This is not an app server, but it's okay. I'm inside the container. Just to control PQ. Docker PS. It is running. Yeah, this time it is running. Yeah, what is the name? App server. Something like that. Now I'll spin up another container. Maybe probably with the same image name, but this time I'll say that this is my web server. And I would like to link that with the previous one. So one way direction. So what is the name of that syntax is link app server, or I can say so 1-19 name of the container. This time a web server. Please link to app server. Alias, please create an application. Yes, and center is 90. Now, if I try to ping, I'm inside the web server. If I try to ping app, it should work. Now, whereas if I do log into other one, this one, ping, like that was, I would directly I can ping with the container. Not correct. I think, this is, yes, first time we logged in using app server apps and OS 7. This time, this, yeah, so let's try to ping web server. There is no response. Why? Because when this particular thing was deployed, it was not available. Okay, so from web to app, it was not available. From the other end, it is, whereas it is available. So one-way traffic linking. So this is one disadvantage. Later, Docker announced that now we are going to introduce Docker networks. So probably you can go ahead and withdraw this option. Use that port-wise stuff. That's a business orchestration tool. So in this case, yeah, Docker PS. So this is very like we can get clarity and confirmation there. Any questions on the linking side? No questions. I think everyone is busy with doing your mail checking or what?
Is there any specific command to unlink?
Unlink is like, I mean, even container, if you kill it, that is gone, right?
No, without killing the containers. Is there any way to unlink?
You just go ahead and remove that entry from etc host manually.
Okay.
Under etc host, there is an entry there. To remove that, and there will be no connectivity.
Okay, thank you.
So uses of linking, containers can talk to each other without having to expose the ports. So sure, that's what we have so far seen, no? So it will be good for microservice-based application like Tomcat, MySQL, all that stuff. So if, this is an exercise. So traditionally in the integration part, what we have seen earlier, we have a Jenkins server, and then we committed some repository there, wherein we compile, test, and package and try to deploy that to the server. But when we move to the Docker image, yeah, so now that system is changed. So it will be now same CA server, or from repo it will pull the code, compile, test. Instead of building artifacts, now you build the images, and then push that directly to the machine or push that to the Docker Hub. Use some scripts, and then you'll be able to do that particular stuff. That's it. So anyway, when CA things discussed, right? So we will try to do one in this thing. We'll see. Let's see. I mean, if today I have some time, I will try to do that. Yeah, we have time. So you can also go for auto build. Now, you remember yesterday we used the Docker login, wherein we seen some Docker auto build, right? So that is also possible. So let's try to do this thing. But once we complete all the slides. Okay, what is next? So we will try to discuss about private repository and registry there. Yeah, I think Docker machine, we will try to spend some time, not really widely used. Docker Swarm, the orchestration tool, we will try to discuss, and then Docker Compose. These are the things which are discussed. We'll just try to discuss microservice application. Yeah, but let's try to discuss about the CA process. So I think we have already our Jenkins machine is same, it is available in the same machine. So let me first of all try to stop all the containers, because port number is there. Docker stop all is it there now? Go on. Docker PSFNE, a lot of companies. So Docker RM IQ. So now all the ports should be free now, because all the containers are gone. I also want to confirm whether port 80 is free or not, because now we are starting what we are starting Jenkins. No? That's the reason. I'll show you then the demonstration, but in case any troubleshooting things comes, right, we try to check it out here. What was the username given? Test. So go to manage Jenkins first of all. Excuse me. And are there any plugins? Docker plugins is what I said, right? Even you can directly also go to Jenkins plugins. for some best Docker. This plugin allow you to configure email notification. I said Docker. Okay, so this plugin integrates Jenkins with Docker. Each one provides a common shared functionality for various Docker-related plugins. Build and use Docker containers from pipeline script. So I think, yeah, so we can use this one also, pipeline. Docker build step and a lot of things are there. These are not very popular. The popular one is Docker Commons. Common shared functionality for various Docker related plugins. It's a Docker common. It seems that this is developed by Kawasaki only. So Kawasaki cover batch means generally will be good. So and then use this certification path license. It's very new one. Okay. But I never use this one. Issues. Create Docker image. Sync Jenkins. Maybe we'll try to find out one documentation. Scenario, then how to configure Jenkins. So this we can try. So let's see. And then we'll try to implement that in our native Jenkins installation. I also can directly use shell script T, but I'm just trying to look some sophisticated one because the looks like some better way scheme. Okay, this is launching a Jenkins in the Docker itself, Docker container within the following command. So anyway, this is we already have Jenkins running, but I'll put it in a notepad so that you can try it later. The password can be found here because when setting up the password, it'll ask for details. It is asking to access the dashboard. Okay, let me do that. And install Docker plugin. Okay, so we will go and use the Docker plugin. So go to the available section, search for Docker plugin. So we have Docker, just Docker API. Sleeves are there. Is it installed already? Let me just check it out. It's not there. Pipeline is available. We can use this one. Install this thing, Docker pipeline. Maybe the Groovy scripting is required. We'll try to use that. Pipeline basic steps and declarative is installed. Finally, loading plugin extension. Now go to the plugin documentation. So on Jenkins, you need to create a new credentials. Okay, so with your Docker Hub account. Okay, we have already have account. So go to the credentials, global add credentials. Yes, we can create it later also because we don't have credentials separately. We need to install credentials. Let me see. Jenkins, manage plugins, available section, look for credentials. Credentials by name that it is not there. Credentials we can provide later. Credentials we can provide later. Let's do one thing. Go to the job and then start creating it. First is new item. And this is pipeline, right? So it is pipeline. Then give it a name, Docker pipeline. Yeah. Docker pipeline. Select the pipeline. And click on OK. Now go to the advanced option. Follow that. You can skip all the general and build tracker option. Go to the pipeline section. You can include pipeline definitely, usually name Jenkins file. or you can refer to an external location like GitHub's SVN. The first one is to get the Docker file from the GitHub repository. So the second one will build the image using build number to get the version. The third one is pushing the build to the Docker Hub. Finally, we will clean up the previous build with local server. Right. So I'm just copying the script. Yeah, credentials I have to provide. So let me copy this one. This is pipeline script only. Pipeline environment, your Docker Hub account and your repository. Mine is go upstairs. Same here. Raghu ops. Yeah. Raghu ops there. The history credentials Docker Hub underscore ID. Fine. Docker Hub image. I just need one GitHub account from where in a sample code we can pull. So I'll go to the my GitHub slash Raghu ops there. Hello world, where we pull sample code. Proceed. Image, the command is docker image equal to docker build registry build number. That is fine. Apply our image. Docker image push. Yes, steps. Remove the build number. So we'll say that this is save this thing. Try to build and see what it is happening. The credentials it will ask me. Running this thing, setup fail. Instead of that, I'll try to go with freestyle. But go from here. Try to build with Maven. So you get a war file. So post build of that. So you can execute shell. You can mention what it has to be done. So we will try to first let this save back the image. Validate whether the war file is building or not. War file is successfully built at this particular location. So now what we do, we will go to the machine. So we give access to the Jenkins. Jenkins is now having sudo response. Bash. Working as expected. So now we can add the script. Simply go here, configure. The first is write a Tomcat Docker file where you can. So look, what I'm going to do, I'm going to do EC2 folder. So I will try to use one Docker file. So see if it is there or not. Yeah, it is available. Taking the Tomcat image and then copying the WAR file. So WAR file, we'll try to copy that from var lib Jenkins. I think we created a Docker image. Target. Is going to copy to the DevOps folder. Take it out manually first of all. Jenkins plus Louise. Okay, so maybe it is not yet taking the war file from there. I'll only currently I'll use this one. It is built for now. Docker run -d capital P Docker :7 and 156. Check it out. It is working. So now we need to call this one. Check-ins. Here. So once the war file is copied, then Docker build. The same name. Again, to move to the folder, right? So I'm using sudo series/home -user. The image is ready. So we'll try to do at this point for now. So we will pushing and all this thing. We'll try to do a little. First, we'll check it out whether this is working or not. Save this option. Checking the console output. Removing intermediate container. Like that. Copying is done. Is it done? When we do this one, okay. So maybe I think it is executing this one. So what we'll do, Docker file into the GitHub. So this thing, the changes. Doesn't look for dot or thing. No. Wait a minute. Yeah, so that's done. It built. There's a copy error. So we copy to this workspace and then the image got built. Now this thing, yeah, so you can deploy directly through the image, I mean, configure section. Go to the post build section. You can again run -d -p. For example, 1990, I would like to deploy. I know container it is running on 8080. And this is the image name in this case. Save this thing. And then build now. So just check it out whether it is accessible or not. -1990 / web app. Yeah. So this is how you go ahead and set up the CI process there. Similarly, you can also go to the Docker Hub. So in this case, automatic thing is also there. For example, the repository stuff. So yesterday, we're trying to set up the autos thing, right? Expose. Is it true? I guess in our 2105. Where was it? Is create. Basically, I think we can push this thing to the Docker Hub directly. Of course, credentials are needed. And then you need to log into the machine. So using credentials. So we cannot supply that to the shell scripting. So probably you have to use the credential stuff here. As it mentioned, where was the link? I think this is where so credentials configured, but in a Docker pipeline, I think that plugin was not available in the repository. That was the reason we did not use that stuff. But yeah, we directly build it using this thing. Or you can use Ansible also. You can use many things. Yeah. Anyway, we use this Docker image here, which is successfully built, and then application is done. And then in case like if you want to set it up, you can go for auto build option also. Just set up this GitHub hook trigger, and then try to configure this in the GitHub. So for example, this is the GitHub, right? So settings, over here, go to the webhooks. And try to set up this thing. Yeah. And then update this book. And so if any changes are there, automatically it should build the images. So let's just do one change before we end the session for today. Go to web app. It just did some changes. So let's see. So it has to build the image based on that. So it started building. Try to refresh this. The DevOps, some word has to come here. I see it is successful. Yeah, job is triggered, but it will be deployed here. And then, so, you can actually, so integrate that with image in, and you can go ahead and deploy this stuff. Yeah, so that's all from my end. Any questions on this? So what we do, we'll meet on Monday with, a Docker Swarm, Docker Compose, and then a Docker Stack, so orchestration tools.
Raghu, I have one doubt. So today we used the war file from Jenkins and deployed in the container, right?
Yeah.
But yesterday we used the Ansible, we copied the war file to the Ansible machine and then to the target servers. So how we can use Ansible here? So I'm confused here.
So, okay, let me see that example. It is still there. Just quickly, I don't know, my Jenkins just taking time.
Like Docker and Ansible, how we can use together.
Yeah,
So-
right. Yeah, I'll show you one example.
Okay.
Ansible playbook build Docker image. So you just simply just use the playbook to build a Docker image using Ansible. So you're probably like this. I'm not sure if this will give you an idea. Let me just check it out.
Raghu, can we deploy the SQL application in containers?
So when you say still like what is the platform it is uses?
SQL.
SQL, right? Okay, database, yes, you can do that. Yeah. So to previous question, yeah. So this is the Ansible module which we have to use.
Are you sharing your screen? We can't
Oh,
see.
okay. I thought I am. Oh, sorry, but 1 second. I randomly, just checked it, one playbook through which, I can build a Docker image. So in this case, randomly, just checking one playbook. So this is the module we will be using in Ansible to build a Docker image. So the WAR file anyway, it will be built, right? Once it is built, you pick it up. Using the Ansible stuff from respective location. So use this particular Ansible module. So through using this Docker image module, you build the Docker image. You have to have anyway the Docker file, so that through that you can build the image. Now this playbook, like yesterday we deployed into our Jenkins configuration, right? In the play our where is that in Ansible server. So in the Ansible server, you deploy that and you call that particular playbook from the Jenkins project. Make sense?
Okay, so it will create the container. So in which machine it will create? So we do not need to provide the server target servers.
Yeah.
For
Okay.
the container.
So like this is your gate and this is your Jenkins. And what is that we did? We did one Ansible server and this is our target server. Now you pull the SCM here and of course you build all those instructions here, right? 1, 2, 3, whatever. In our case, we used only Maven. You created the WAR file. Now, so this is your Ansible server. So you shipped this WAR file to the Ansible server yesterday. And there we had a one playbook, which was actually doing what? Which was actually copying this particular file to the respective servers. In case yesterday it was only one file, one server. So this was the playbook was very simple. It was doing. Now instead of this step, what do we do here on the Ansible? So will be having Docker here itself installed, and we will be the Docker file, the playbook, everything will be here. Docker file, playbook, and this is not there. The one we see yesterday, this will be not there. This playbook will not be there. So instead of this thing, this playbook will be there. So which will build an image using this particular playbook. So as soon as my copy is done, so we use the record set yesterday, the record set. So we'll be having the second record set. So the second record set will be calling this particular playbook, which will build the image. So in enterprise level, generally we will store these image files in a repository. So you can have a DTR repository, or if you don't want to use an enterprise edition, so you can store these images in probably a dedicated server in your company and let all your machines pull those images from here, the respective repositories. So the only change you do is instead of that copy playbook, you will write this kind of playbook. This kind of playbook, which will build image using the artifacts.
Okay, so the other servers will use the image and create the container inside that.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So the advantage you will be having here is, see, shell script is, I don't know if you have exposed to that, but it is not that friendly. So we also seeing right. We are facing a lot of difficulty even in these things adding. So shell script generally is not very friendly when you try to integrate with your Jenkins. So even the scripting, the groovy scripting. So the one which we copied, if you remember when URL I closed it. So that is also that not friendly. So people, that is the reason people generally use Ansible to add as an integration between your application servers and the Jenkins servers. So you'll have more control when you integrate that stuff. So that's the reason. So just try to always use in case if your company is using Ansible, try to use Ansible, or if it is Chef, try to use Chef. This is extremely simple playbook, but depending on your application requirement, you can build a complex playbook also, such as, for example, taking a backup and doing a clean shutting down, and then doing a clean deployment, etc. can be also incorporated in the playbook. Yeah, so there's one more question. Okay, SQL, right? So have generally, like, the question is not right now in business, these Dockers are not using the DB layer. But to answer your question, can I deploy a database or anything in a container? Answer is yes.
Yeah, suppose if we deploy also, if we lose the data, then how can we retrieve?
So if you remember that volume, right?
Yeah.
Volume concept. So you need to configure your database in such a way that the data should supposed to store on the volumes. So then the persistency will come into picture. So for example, you need to write a separate Docker file for that. So let's say you are using AWS. So you'll be having EBS block storage. So generally you'll be doing that now. So you'll be using this, let's say MySQL or Postgres in a database container. So write a Docker file such a way that the EBS can be mounted here. And then you need to modify in such a way that let's say you're using MySQL database, that whatever the data location should refer to this volume. This volume.
But a huge amount of storage, it's right.
Yeah, EBS you can get TBs of sizes, no? Yeah, there will be no load on your container machine because storage is anyway it is external device, no? So no, on your EC2 machine or in your container, there will be no problem. Only thing is, read and write access stuff. So that you need to plan. So for example, if you want to scale up this environment, because if you only have one container, it will be very difficult. So you need to plan that at least you have number of containers to read. Only plan to try to have only one container which can write the data to the machine. So generally only read, you require a lot of containers. So that you need to plan.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So Raghu, can we achieve high availability in database containers like this?
So you mean like if this container crashes and all this stuff?
Yeah, actually, one of container is in read write and the other container is read only, but the data will be same in background. Like that, we can achieve.
I actually never worked on that kind of POC and a DB layer because no one generally using the DB layer container. But because you just asked me, probably I will go with orchestration.
Okay.
Orchestration I'll try to go. So wherein I have full control. So for example, Kubernetes I'll go or Docker Swarm. So wherein I'll maintain the desired state and it always verify desired versus availability. So if there is any differences, let's say you read this number of containers to read this number of this thing, it will immediately spin up new containers.
Okay.
This is just theoretically, but again, implement while you go for implementation, you'll be having difficulties. So you need to address that. Yeah.
But I have aware of the stateful, but I did not much knowledge on that. So that's why I'm asking.
Okay. Yeah. So most of, so far, when this container is started evolving 2014 onwards, last 7 years I'm into containers, but no client actually prefer to have DB in the container area. Mostly they're using either physical machines or EC2 machines. Yeah. It's only this layer like MongoDB, NoSQL layer, they are using containers. So generally like
Postgres, like Postgres and NoSQL database may be using their containers.
Yeah, but not the Oracle and MS SQL. Maybe slowly, people will start once they start what do you call consuming these containers more and more. So one day even DB also may go to containers. Again, the principle is very important. See, why do we need containers? We need containers to isolate the components, basically microservice based architecture, right? That is one of the reasons. So generally it is only useful in the app layer and web layer. So DB layer, no meaning, no purpose, having containers there because isolation is not there.
Yeah.
That is theoretically it is not required.
Okay, most of the servers they are maintaining as services like dedicated servers.
Yeah, dedicated server, correct. Very sensitive, very critical, DB.
Yeah, the data is very important to organization. If application is God means we can build it from previous version, but data will loss means we can't bring it back.
Yeah, I have seen a lot of my with whom I was working in the client. So they moved into DBA services. In DBAC or DBAC, I don't remember the abbreviation. What do you mean by that? For example, now Oracle, what they did is from 18C onwards, they stopped selling licenses.
Okay.
They stopped selling licenses. So they're telling all the clients only use our cloud service. So the advantage is that you no need to maintain your own data center on-prem for database layer. Also, you don't need any engineers because I was working with one solution wherein 90 plus database engineers were working for a client. So 2000 January, yeah. So what that client did is Oracle contacted that client. So they have a data center in Atlanta. So the maintenance cost was $5 million USD only for that, per data center. So they said you shut down the data center. You give me only 2 million. And the second thing is you have around close to 90 database engineers. So DBA guys, they're very expensive. DBA guys are always expensive in market. So they said, you ramp them down. That they're like service sector. So ramp them down. So you mean basically speaking, put them in bench, or fire them.
Yeah.
So and then give me all that to me. Oracle said, we will manage. You don't need to pay me upfront cost also. Based on the database usage, as in when it increasing, only pay me that much.
Yeah, but most of the companies is using the 11Z R2, I think so. This is the most stable version. But they are not interested to go with the higher versions. But because in future maybe we are getting any problem, means we'll stuck with them. But after total testing, they can be moved. But now when
I think it is little threat for the DBA guys. So it's even Microsoft also. I think I don't know whether they came with that service already. AWS having right your services, RDS services. So it is client are saying that now after moving into cloud, now their applications is very stable database. So mostly the what will be the problem, performance issue will used to come on-prem or in all this thing, no? Oh, that is not there. It's a time in case if anyone of you working in DB layer, time to upskill.
that's right. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Okay, I think some of you already might have dropped. Okay, so it's already 17 minutes past. But yeah, it's worth discussing, I think. So it's always, the technology always changes. So yeah, so we'll catch up on Monday, the weekend. Happy weekend, and see you on Monday then.
Okay, thank you, Raghu.
Thank you.
Happy weekend.
Bye.
Thanks, Raghu.
Thank you.